Welcome, everybody, to the Northwoods Kindred Podcast. I'm Bodvar, the chieftain and Gothi of the Northwoods Kindred. Today I have a really cool show. We had to go to Northern California to a family get-together because we had a baby born into the Gjallarhorn Kindred, an Asatru born to an Asatru born into the Kindred. So we have our first third generation child born into the Kindred. It was kind of a big deal. So we went down there to have a celebration and some ceremony, and it was a good time. Now, in doing that, I had a great opportunity to sit down with my really good friend, the chieftain of the Gjallarhorn Kindred, Haakon Donaldson, and I got to sit down with him for a while as he is my mentor, and we just got to talk on Asatru in this country. And we'll talk about how we got together, as well as how we each came and found this way on our own, and then we came together under one banner for a long period of time, and then of course eventually the Northwoods was born of what we learned with our time in Gjallarhorn. It's a great little story. I'd love for you to be a fly on the wall and just sit back and listen to me and Gothi Haakon reminisce about the old days and talk about things that we can fix and things we have fixed. Things that are better now and things that we have to do some work on. It's going to be fun. I don't know where the conversation is completely going to go, but I think that you'll certainly enjoy it. This podcast is split into two podcasts, so I'll cover a little this week and a little more next week, and that ought to be all right. And I think really a key takeaway, something I want you to really think about when you listen to us, when you're just a fly on the wall, think about how much our paths, especially our early years, is reflected again in your early paths. So think about the things that we talk about that we went through or we overcame, and then how you may be experiencing or recently experienced some of those other things, those same things on your own journey. So really kind of make that connection and see that we all basically start in the same place, and where you end up is a product of your dedication and the amount of work that you put into it. Before we jump into the podcast, I want to say check out the links I have below. No matter where you're consuming this podcast, there should be some show notes or something. Those links are going to take you to my link tree, which is going to show you all of the socials that I have going on. It's going to give you a link to my Discord where the real learning happens. There's a lot of really good discussions taking place with native Norwegians and Icelanders and Swedes and Danes, as well as Americans, and from all walks of life and pretty much all disciplines within Asatru. It's a really open and free way to communicate, and it's drama-free, so we don't deal with any drama at all. It's a good way to get launched. So jump in that link tree, follow the link back to my website, and get your free downloads. I have downloads for bloat and various other little important things that you might want to know when you're first coming into the path. And we'll have a lot more downloads and stuff in there coming soon, so go ahead and bookmark the site so you can find your way back when you need to. Now, without further ado, enjoy being a fly on the wall. So Haakon and I, we met 2001 time frame, just before 9/11 happened. Because I remember, because Angel was pregnant, and or Gidja Skobel was pregnant, and we had a funeral to go to, I think, my dad's funeral, because he died the day before 9/11. So we were flying to that. And but before all of that stuff happened, we were communicating on emails, if you remember all of that stuff.
You were on a float.
Yeah, I was deployed. We weren't at war, because 9/11 hadn't happened yet. It was just a general old Westpac 6-month deployment at sea. And there wasn't a lot of, it's kind of funny because when you came up, there was no internet stuff at all. Maybe a bulletin board, right?
Yeah, it was still dial-up.
Yeah.
Paid by the minute. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yep. You get the AOL discs in the mail?
Yep.
So, yeah. So when we started, we didn't have the resources that we have now. There weren't any podcasts. There was no YouTube, much less, there was just no information out there, And what you did get your hands on was an occasional book. You either found it at a used bookstore or a library sale. You might get lucky and get like an old text, like a Duchalou or even a Hollander. But for the most part, only thing you have at that time was like Barnes & Noble. Even Amazon wasn't even a thing yet, right?
eBay wasn't a thing yet either.
Oh, eBay. Yeah, I've got some books off eBay.
Yep. Used to be war. Blood Feud started from book competitions.
Oh, yeah. We sniped Jacob Grimm's 4-volume set on eBay. Yeah, we pulled that last minute poof.
And then it was like, I got the 4-volume, and it was like a drug deal. I had to meet the found out the guy that sold it was a Russian guy that lived in San Diego, and I met him in a parking lot instead of him spending it for shipping.
Was he wearing an Adidas tracksuit? Was he Russian model?
He was wearing a tracksuit, but I met him he was sitting on a bench, and I walked up and I sat down next to him, and he goes, "Are you Joe Vanetta?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And he slid over the books. I looked at the books. Then I slid over the cash. He looked at the cash. We got up and went our separate ways.
So, long story short, in the early days of Asatru in America, every book sale was a drug deal, apparently, in the park.
The rare ones were, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, we did that last minute eBay sniper thing.
Yep.
They probably have apps for that now where you don't even have to be awake, but we were waiting for that last minute, and it's like, submitted.
Yep. And sometimes we lost.
Sometimes people were quicker, for sure. But yeah, so that was all you could get before.
Yeah.
You just had to if you didn't read, you weren't going anywhere.
Because most of the old books were out of print. You were hoping that they would come and reprint, or some university would reprint it. But in the beginning, there was very few.
Yeah. And there was even less information you could use to actually build a practice, because even what was there a lot of it was just like archaic, random, uncategorized information about the Viking Age. It didn't take into account anything that's happened from the Viking Age to modern times. It didn't really go into much detail. A lot of it about Bronze Age and Stone Age, Scandinavia, or any of that kind of stuff. So it was at least what you could get was very pinpoint focused on the Viking Age, up to 1066 and the mass conversion to Christianity, and then the books pretty much ended because that was done with their evaluation.
It was all historical context too.
Yeah.
It wasn't a how-to book.
Right.
You had to decipher and figure that stuff out yourself.
Yeah. Design your own rituals, design your own practice type of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and then today, man, you guys don't know how good you got it.
Well, it's good and bad. There's much more material, but it's bad because there's overwhelming amount of material.
Right.
A lot of it's not very good.
And a lot of people position themselves as someone who knows what's going on, and in reality, like, vet your spiritual advisors, because a lot of them have only been here for a year or two.
Yeah.
They don't even, and they don't have like depth of knowledge, because it's not something you can get. I mean, you can work as hard as you want to work over a 1 to 2 year period, and you are not going to take it in. It's just you got to have time off. You got to have time to let that stuff just kind of process and fall into place, and then all of a sudden you get your little epiphany, and you want to go back and
And then it's in stages too, because you'll have one epiphany about one thing, live your life a little bit more, get a little bit more wisdom, and all of a sudden you look at the same issue and you get another epiphany.
Yeah, or you just have an experience that makes everything, it's like, oh, of course, that's what it means.
Yeah.
Because the experiences I've noticed, at least when I start going through things like the Havamal or reading like the old sagas, a lot of the experiences that they have, they echo in our experiences. It's a different time, more tech. We're stressed out over stuff that they wouldn't even bat an eye at, because it's a different lifestyle. But they still kind of reflect. We're still doing the same things. We're still meeting people, and
we still have relationships. We're still dealing with alcohol and festivities, codes of conduct, dealing with people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and there's always people on the fringes.
Yep.
There's feuds, heavy feuds. Yeah, they're digital now, but feuding it's an epic part of the sagas. Would be nowhere near as interesting if people weren't killing each other.
Yeah, in their own homes. Yeah.
So if you did go to the store to buy a new book, you were stuck with some New Age stuff.
Rites of Odin.
Everybody starts there, though. Everybody started with that thing.
And blooms.
Bloom, yeah.
Yeah, the ceramic runes.
Yeah, they come with
and Odin's rune, the mysterious blank rune.
The mysterious blank rune, yeah. Boy, I
don't know where he got that from, but I was like, maybe he gave up on something and said, I don't know, we'll call it a blank rune.
Maybe 25 is a better number than 24 when it comes to manufacture. I don't know.
Got a discount.
Yeah, you get a discount, You get four for $1. So
yeah, but like you said, everyone started in those days in the same place.
Yeah, and that's all we had. And because I remember before I met you, the first Asatru book I had a couple of random runic books. I'm sure I had at least one of Blum's. And then I had the Rites of Odin. And the first ritual I ever did, which was still a functional ritual, was right out of the Rites of Odin. I didn't know. I was just reading it right out of the book the whole time. There was nothing coming from the heart or out of my head. It was all new. It seemed to me very like play witchcrafty. You know, the way we would do it, we drew the circle and put some candles out, and we used an MRE box as an altar. We're in the middle of the Kuwaiti desert.
Yeah.
Used an MRE box as an altar, and then for a bowli, we had a canteen cup, and the only thing we had to offer was coffee with cream and sugar, because that was what we had of value, right?
At that time and place, that's prize goods.
That was for sure. Even the water to make it was prize goods, you know. So we did that, and then we did this ritual out of the book, read it right out of the book, did our best to, you know, I think we had a knife. There's no sprig. You know, it's all dirt. But we did have a bayonet, so we'd have the knife thing. And we did this ritual, and then there's a haboob. You seen the haboob?
Yeah, I have. I've seen one. I know of it. I haven't seen one personally.
It's a big old giant
wall of sand.
And you can see them coming.
Yeah.
They're out on the horizon, and they're just this wall moving towards you. We're like, we're going to have to take cover. So we left everything in the circle. We didn't. First ritual ever. It's just me and my friend Claire. And so we left everything. We go back to our hooch. We do the whole poncho. You cover up with your poncho, and you tuck it all up underneath you. You get down like that, and you just let the sand go over. That way you can still breathe. You got some oxygen trapped in there. So we go through this haboob, and it's just like you would expect if you watched The Mummy or something.
Yeah.
It's not quite as like evil.
You saw no faces.
But there's no faces or horses riding or anything. But it is dark, and it is very weird. So we do this thing. We get through the haboob, and we shake all the dirt off, and it's kind of cool because like you leave something laying out, and it's so thoroughly covered in sand, but it's not buried. It's almost like it got spray painted sand colored.
Oh, wow.
And you pick it up and you shake the sand, like you leave your black rifle laying out, and then it's just poof, and it's just like this layer of sand over everything. So we go in, we ride out the storm, which is, 5 minutes at best, and they just pass right by. And then we go back to the circle where we were at. You can still see the line in the sand where we drew the circle, and then everything was still set up the way it was. Obviously, we blew the candles out. They weren't. That would have been cool to leave them going and see if they would. But what was inside that circle was protected. There was sand in there and stuff, but nothing. The box didn't go rolling across the desert or any of that stuff. And we're like, that means something. That matters. Yep. And I've never looked back since that one point right there. And that was my first deployment, I think, possibly. Yep. Yeah, which would have been, I started this stuff in like 93, and my first deployment would have been late 94 up into early 95, and that's where we would have been in the Kuwait desert. Would have been about 95 time frame, and that was when that happened. And I was like, ritual's amazing. Yeah. And then, I practiced little ones here and there, but that was where I got started before I ever even met you. I don't know. I had no idea where you got started. So by that point, you were already a graybeard. Yeah. For me.
But no, I got started in an unlikely place. In high school, I went to St. Augustine High School. I was taught by Augustinians. And about junior year of high school, it wasn't working for me, so I went to one of the priests and told him I have no faith. How do I get faith? And he said, I can't give it to you. You have to, either you have it or you don't. And I said, well, I don't have it. And he said, well, maybe you should look somewhere else. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Aren't my parents paying you an ungodly amount of money to make me a good Catholic? He goes, no, your parents are paying me an ungodly amount of money to educate you. That's your choice. He goes, go explore. You may find something you like, or you may find your way back. You don't know until you look. So I started looking, and like a lot of people, Eastern philosophies, Taoism, the I Ching, and a lot of it was nice, but didn't fit. And then one day in the high school library, I found a book on the old gods. And I started reading that, and that made more sense than anything I had read before. So I stole the book.
Which makes perfect sense. That's awesome.
St. Augustine High School Library, yep. So
they don't need it.
It wasn't checked out much. But so then I started exploring that, and then found Ed Bloom and the Rites of Odin. Then I went in the military and was exploring that as much as I could. And when I got out of the military, I thought I was like this pioneer, and I was the only one practicing this thing, like a lot of people when they first do it. And I would go to Ren fairs after the military, and that's where I met Ragnar. So I would dress Norse, and back in those days, no one did. They didn't like Norse because you didn't fit in their timeline. And so that made it even more attractive. So I'd go as Norse, and me and my friend Scott were walking down the path, and out of the behind us, we hear someone yell, "Kinsman!" I didn't even know what the word meant. So we kept walking, and a very loud baritone, "Kinsman!" comes out. We turn around, there's Ragnar in the hero pose.
Totally see it.
You know, he's got a tam o' shanter on and his kilt and a big hammer. He waves over, "Kinsman, come here." So we walk over, and he looks at my hammer, and he goes, "I see you wear the hammer. What does that mean to you?" And as I said, "Well, it's a mark of faith. And he said, "For me as well. You are welcome." And that night I experienced my first summel.
Oh,
I
very
never
cool.
had a summel. He was the one with his horn that I have. So, and then for a year and a half, almost 2 years maybe, I would meet him periodically at Ren fairs, and we'd always summel. And finally he showed me that I wasn't unique, you know, crushing blow, that other people around the world and the country were practicing this and had been for a while. So he introduced, showed me the alliance, and then we were just banging around for a long time until one day he ended up moved to San Diego. And he goes, "Well, I'm in town, and you're in town." And he looked at his wife, Mary, at the time. He goes, "Me, Mary, and you, that's 3. We could do a kindred."
That's a kindred, yeah.
I'm like, okay. I had no idea what to do. And I said, "That sounds like a great idea." And then we had to decide upon which god that would be our patron, and it was we were mulled around Draupnir Kindred and Odin, and then of all people, Mary came up with, no, Gjallarhorn Kindred would be Heimdall. And that clicked, because that was my patron at the time even. So I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." We took a formal vote, and we became a kindred. And then Ragnar immediately nominated me as Gothi. And Mary seconded it. Boom. I'm Gothi. I never, you know, I'm just starting. I've only done private, you know, solitary practice.
Right.
So we started and building up from that. And within a year, he took me to the first Asatru Alliance event. And yeah, he was a con man to me, sir, for the early years, Ragnar. If we go to the all thing, yeah, we should petition. We're a kindred now. We can petition at membership, and we can get more of a society and get to know other people from around the country. That's a great idea. What's the process? Oh, you just go there and, you know, you petition and you go in front of the thing, and they ask you just a couple questions, and then they take a vote. I'm like, well, shit, I can do that. I haven't been doing it that long, but I can do that. Well, that was a lie. Because we go there, and everyone knew Ragnar, but they didn't know me. So I end up in the middle of a circle, and everyone's throwing questions at me from all directions. So I answer a question, turn, answer a question, turn, for an hour. I was interrogating. Wow. And every time I looked up, because Ragnar was in the periphery, every time I looked at our brother, he's just sitting there with a big shit-eating grin on his face.
What kind of questions were they asking? Were they asking like lore questions, or was it like, how do you think and feel about these topics, or just like a mix of everything?
The initial part was a normal, who are you? They didn't know me at all. So a lot of the beginning was establishing who I am, where I come from, how did I find, you know, the religion, what do I see, the function of a kindred, where do I see the religion going, and things like that. And so there was a lot of general questions like that. There was some bullshit questions in there too. Right. About the be classified more political, but soft political ones, but obviously people just trying to feel you out. So, but the fact that I went in there cold, and Ragnar's laughing at me in the corner. Yeah, right. And so
that's
there was
so Ragnar too.
But there was a lot of, you know, do you do marriages? What kind of marriages do you do? How often do you gather? What rituals do you do? You know, and your patrons, and sometimes they throw you in a situation like this. What would you do?
Yeah.
So, which
I hate hypotheticals. Yeah,
it's just like any other politics. You know, a candidate running for office. Well, here's an event you'll never deal with, but we want to know what you would do.
Yeah.
So, but after an hour, I was released, and they sequestered to take a vote, and I'm walking, and by that time I'm hot. I was pissed. I was tired, and then he just does the whole open arm. You did good, and gave me a big old hug, and then we were voted in, and I think that was all thing 16. I'm not sure. I burned out a lot of that memory.
Yeah, I bet.
But, and then that's when I got to, the best thing is I got to meet other kindreds, other perspectives, and then met some good kindreds and other people and made good friends and ignored the others.
It's always kind of a mixed bag. I noticed at the Alliance gatherings, there were some people with really good hearts but didn't know what was going on.
Yep.
And there were people who had their finger in every little thing that was going on, just trying to manipulate everything. But you couldn't really get close to those people. They weren't the type of people you could get close to. They were just manipulators all in general, you know. And so that was always a little frustrating. But then there was the good ones, you know. There was the little core groups, and it's like, oh man, I hope he shows up at this gathering, you know.
Yeah, there was some golden times, some golden all things.
But those people never lasted more than a couple of years. All the good ones kind of would drift in and get to know some people and make some connections, and then be like, you know, this is kind of some horse shit, and just kind of float on and do their own thing.
Yep. And there would be a constant cycle.
But we still talk to some of those people today from 20 years ago, or more for you, obviously. But yeah, everybody kind of came in on a little rotating schedule.
Yep.
Catch a couple of good ones, you know. Then a couple of like, I'm not sure what to make of this situation. Yeah. And then, because ultimately what turned us away was that last all thing we went to when he had those convicts there and I don't have a problem, like, you know, do the crime, do the time or whatever, but we're talking about a forest alone in Arizona somewhere with very little supervision, and my wife and my kids running around, and these people who were, I mean, these weren't like reformed. These are people who just got out, you know, and I don't know what they went in for. And while I don't have a right to know, I do have a right. I do need to know if I'm going to be comfortable in this environment. And so when I talked to Valgard, and I was like, you know, I'd really like to know, like, at least put me to ease and tell me that these people aren't here for violent sex offenses or offenses against children or anything. Like, my family's here, man. Like, throw me a bone. He's like, I can't really do that. It's not my place. I was like, okay, well, there you go. You take your alliance, wrap it up really tight, and shove it up your stiff old ass. I'm out of here. So, well, that didn't help, too, that I said that McNugget was a freaking used car salesman or a snake oil salesman. That's why I call him a snake oil salesman. And then everybody's like, how dare you? He's an elder of the folk. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's peddling Nazi flyers out of the trunk of his car. He's not an elder. He's a douchebag.
Oh, the whirlwind tours?
Yeah.
Probably all things. He'd
swoop in
for a couple hours and hand out his paraphernalia and swoop out.
Yeah, so we never really got along, he and I. But, you know, and now, you know, looking back on it and having the resources that we have with the internet, it's kind of, they both have a really bad like reputation, especially from the start. But I didn't realize, even then, being in the alliance for as long as we were, I didn't realize how connected those two agencies were to each other. I thought they were just old friends. I didn't know that those two. But now, I mean, even now, if you get a Vortrue catalog, it's peddling McNallen's propaganda in the Vortrue catalog. Yeah. Straight. I mean, there's no even any attempt to hide it. And I mean, I can understand that they were a part of the start of Asatru in America.
That was a true folk assembly.
But we would be better if they hadn't started. It would have gotten started, I think, and we'd be in a better position, I think. Possibly, but what do I know?
You don't know. It could not. If it wasn't started then, it would maybe started now, and we would have lost 30 years. But
I think if they would have stayed out of it, it would have been better, because it was still happening in Australia, and you had the Theodes, and you had all that stuff in the UK, and there was a lot of different pieces and parts that were all wellspringing at the same time there in the early 70s around the world. It would have made its way here eventually, but
they did start it. Well, my big beef would be that it started to grow, and then it grew to a certain point, and then they quash it.
Yes,
because it gets out, they can't control it.
Right.
So then, I mean, isn't that the whole point? Is to educate and empower the people?
Yeah.
But once it gets out of their control, or some other personalities come in that people are paying attention to, not that it's politics, but they feel threatened, and then all of a sudden, got to reduce membership, got to play some games, and that's why we left both organizations.
Yeah. It was weird. It was something else that just seemed kind of strange, like when new blood comes in. Because when I was new blood, we got this new family and this active duty military and his wife and his babies, and it's like
Marine Corps Scout
so
sniper.
Much,
what a warrior!
It was so much fun, and everybody wanted to be my friend, and it was all great. And then slowly they're like, Sam and Haakon got that guy all spun up now, and now he's kind of a judgmental dick.
He's not drinking the Kool-Aid.
He's not drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I thought he was programmable. He was in the military. You can program those guys. Nope. Yeah. So that's kind of funny, but I mean that's where we started. So you can't completely
part of our history.
Throw it all out. Nope. But I will say that, because I know that a lot of people say that Valgard, of course, has connections in some,
he's in a couple books.
Yeah, so he has those connections, but that was not the visual coming in cold. Obviously, you didn't have that visual either when you came in cold. You got to be there for a while and see the behind the scenes garbage before you.
It's a slow sale.
Yeah.
You start the same thing with the new and improved AFA that we were involved in. You only saw you saw the sales pitch, like any religion. You saw the opening sales pitch, and but you hang around long enough, and you're Gjallarhorn, so all we sit around, don't say much, and watch everything. You start figuring things out, and that's when we said, nope.
But it's good that we've been through that, and we went through it with those people, because now I have especially in the position that we're in now, where we're actually helping people on this path, is that I have a lot of compassion for people who bought the sales pitch, because they're still pitching the same sales pitch.
We all did. At one point.
Yeah, we met a lady. She was a Quaker. Like, her kids are Quaker. Her son is like a Quaker priest or something, and I don't know what their clergy is called, but they were deep into it, And she was like, "This doesn't serve me anymore. I was trying to find something else, so I got online. I did some research. I joined the AFA, and I'm like, pump the brakes. Let me tell you a little bit about that organization." And she's like, "It doesn't say anything like that. Everything on their website is all about faith, folk, and family. It's all about this, ancestral connection. It doesn't have anything about exclusionary or separatist or anything about it." And I was like, "Yeah, that's the slow manipulation. That's the sales pitch to get you in the door. You pay your measure of gold, and you slowly get indoctrinated. You'll never get to the hardcore stuff unless you start buying the lie, and then you end up higher echelons in their church, and that's how it works." And so I have a lot of compassion for people who are AFA members that it's like Scientology, right? Like, you got to pay $20,000 to get to level 3 or whatever, and $50,000 to get to level 4. So it's kind of like that. Like, when you buy the propaganda, you start moving up in rank in the organization, And if you're really, really good at being told what to do, you can be a folk builder, And then that's how they're doing it, and that's how they're building it. These poor people, and they're like, "I just want to honor my ancestors. I want to honor the gods. I want to do this thing," and they have a good platform or a program that, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you must be a racist." And the problem is, we're attacking people who are joining it out of ignorance. We joined it out of ignorance.
Yep.
It hasn't really been changed much over all this time, but we grew, we learned, and we moved on. We shouldn't hold it against people in this faith, because that's what's there. Like, eventually we can shut it down, but
we're all here to learn, educate, and evolve.
Yeah.
And Gjallarhorn was a member of the Asatru Alliance and AFA at some point. And
I think you guys were done with the AFA by the time we came in.
I was known for really good resignation letters.
Yeah.
I did it very publicly, so.
Because we never did anything, and the few run-ins interactions I've had with McNow were all post Gjallarhorn's AFA time. At least I think it might have been. I mean, I wasn't privy to whatever connections you had. So.
That was mainly me and Thorn.
Yeah.
During that time, and yeah, McNell and Thorn loathe each other.
Yeah.
Really loathe each other.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, I mean, but everyone's here to grow, evolve, and learn. And if we didn't go, if Gjallarhorn wasn't a member of the Asatru Alliance and the AFA, we wouldn't have become who we are. We learned a lot. We learned what to do and a lot of what not to do. Met some good people, some wackadoos. But we still have relationships with the good people, and we've learned from our lessons and just moved on down the road.
Right. Yeah, and that's what you got to do. And the problem is there's such a class warfare thing going on now. I get that maybe you can transition from brand new to knowing what's going on a little bit faster, because it's not like you just see these people once a year at an all thing. You see these people every day online in your chat groups and discords. So the community is really kind of blossoming in that direction. But at the same time, you can't expect new people to not fall into the hands of these professional propagandists anyway. I mean, that's what they do. So, I mean, that's part of our past. It's part of our history. So it definitely needed to be said. But
yeah, I think towards the end that was the games of the politics. We were actually enjoying too much, and we weren't enjoying anything else. And it's like, this isn't right. If this is the only thing we're into, so we got to get out of this.
We're just showing up to play the game. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, it was time.
I do miss them though. I miss the being alone in the forest, camping, eating, having summels and rituals with a whole bunch of Asatru, and many of them that I don't know. I miss that once a year kind of pilgrimage to the Alliance gatherings.
There's still, so some members of the community are still acting like they're in 1970, 1980s.
Yeah.
And with the same old grievances. I mean, it's the past.
Yeah.
And so much has evolved. The whole world has evolved with the way and the faith, and it's time to just, for basically everyone to grow up and forget the fucking little things that separate us and leave politics out of it and try to focus on what it's about, which is the people and the gods and the way and the norms.
Right. I think it's actually a benefit to people now that we went through things like the early days with the AFA and the Alliance, and other people too. I've had some other friends that had been in those circles, probably more Theodis or even in the Wicca side connection when they were starting to build Asatru together. But I have some friends that kind of worked those angles as well, and it's important that we did that then because we learned the lessons.
Yeah. Those
lessons would be a lot harder to learn and hold and stick around a lot longer in today's world. Like everything's filmed, everything's on YouTube, and like we got to learn all those lessons in the dark forest alone, where there's no records being kept, But there's enough of a record that we don't repeat these same mistakes by doing these same things again. So we got to go learn the hard way,
and we can see it, bro. It's obvious to us when we see it again. So we can pick that stuff out real quick.
Yeah, that's a real big value to it's like having done it.
Certain phrases or certain words or the certain mannerisms, like, oh, I've been down this road before. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Things do, when they start to have the same repeating patterns that we're familiar with, we're like...
Because some people in this community aren't very creative, and they're just regurgitating the old thing, the story, new and improved, or a different little aspect to it, but it's really the same shtick.
Yeah, but what I have issues because, like, with some of it, because the hard extremes find one flaw, and they don't give anybody credit for growth. They think you are the snapshot of what this was.
Yeah.
They see one little thing like, oh, that's not the right rune. You must be a card-carrying Nazi apprentice or whatever. And it's like, it was on the internet. I thought it was cool, and I just used. There was no explanation. I just thought it was a neat-looking symbol, or something like that. And then so we're taking these people that are just getting here, and we're like, you're an asshole Nazi. You're not welcome. Get out. And it's like, we don't even make an offer. We don't even try to figure out what the motivation was or entertain, try to educate a little bit. We're just going to throw them out because we don't like a symbol or we don't like a word people don't understand how entwined everything is,
Well, and they do that with the knowledge too. So if the knowledge has been known to come from a certain organization, that can't be used.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of times they weren't the ones that came up with it, but people recognize them for using it.
Right.
It doesn't mean what they used is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, so I'm sorry. I use things that I have experienced and learned in the Asatru Alliance and the AFA.
Right.
I put my tinge on it and maybe morphed it a little bit, but that's the roots of it.
Yeah, you throw out the obvious propaganda.
Yeah,
and that's replace it with something wholesome. And
because that's the history of Gjallarhorn Kindred. We were former members of both organizations, and we observe, we learn as we go through life, and we picked up a couple things. Mm-hmm. Some things we found value in. And if people recognize that as being from that, not necessarily they did it, but I'm not going to stop my practices because you're trying to dictate politics on me, which are not even my politics.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I mean by people think like you had a glimpse of this from your past, so that must be a snapshot of who you are. I think people have a tendency to believe that nobody's growing, nobody's learning from their mistakes and evolving and moving into the future. And some of those things you take with some, like I think one thing that's kind of contested nowadays, the flavor of it changes, but one thing that's pretty heavily contested is there's a lot of people who just refuse to summel because it's not to the letter of the lore. Summel doesn't exist, and of course it was a big thing for the AFA, and the Alliance of course adopted it too in a slightly different manner. But they're like, that's a bad thing. But if you go through the lore, even just read through some of Duchalou's stuff, the act of the summel ritual is part of. From what I've been able to peel out, the feast is the event.
Yep. So
you have the feast, but a part of the feast is that drinking round, which would be the meanie or the memory round, and it was done a certain way, oaths to Odin and Njord, and right. So it was all done a certain way. So if you take and you separate the feast from that drinking round, now you have a summel.
Yep. And
then so you got to give it some other context. You got to flesh it out and build it up a little bit. And I think I love the summel.
It's my favorite ritual.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest.
Yep. And one that can be celebrated with non-heathen. I've hosted a summel with a Catholic priest, a Mormon bishop, and a Buddhist, all in the same circle. I was honoring a friend of mine who had died. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because they went in kind of lighthearted. Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, that's.
They come out feeling the weight of that ritual, right?
All of a sudden, the rest of the time, oh man, that was amazing, and da da da. And I was there for the weekend. The next night, oh man, we doing that thing again tonight? We doing that summel? I'm like, no, that was for my friend. We only do it once. Oh, that was so cool.
Yeah. So I had two different versions of that too. Like one after we've summeled enough that it kind of just became a part of who we are, and I rolled that into the Marine Corps. Whenever we would go do special training or special schools, I would always end that with a horn of mead, which you showed me how to brew. So I'd always bring a horn of mead to these special training exercises, like graduating sniper school or getting through a particularly trying man tracking course that we went through, some things like that, or mountain courses, things like that. And I'd bring out this horn, and we would do. It was kind of a summel. But what we do is I would raise a horn to everybody that was there, to the class, to the people and that would be like the opening of the ritual. And it would go around and everybody would just say something that was profound that they got from the training that we did, like something that they learned that they're going to take with them into the future and all that kind of cool stuff. And then at the end, I would of course give that last toast to the whites, the land, the spirits that hosted our training, and everybody always thought that was an amazing ritual. And why my own personal horn has been drank out of by some of the most deadly characters to ever wage war on this planet. Recon Marines, snipers, Rhodesian SAS, Cella Scouts. I've had a lot of people drink from that horn. And I don't even rarely use it anymore. It's like my war horn, but that phase of my life is over. But that was based on a summel. And now Sasha, she's seen more death than she should at her age. So, she's had friends commit suicide and die in car accidents. There's just a string of death that whole community's had to suffer, her and her friends, with suicides and that kind of stuff. And so when things like that happen, because they do, she generally gets all of her friends and they come to the house and they get, they hanging in the hot tub and doing their thing, but she always leads them in this little summel. Go out to the Vey, I'll light them a fire. I whip them up. In fact, we did a video on it, how to do a non-alcoholic mead with honey and apple juice and stuff, which is really good. It's really good. So I'll knock them together a big batch of non-alcoholic mead, and they'll go out to the Vey and they'll do a little summel. I don't go out and record it or spy on them or anything, but Sasha's the little folk gatherer, the little Gija leader of her people, and they're raising horns to Jesus and Mary and whoever they want, and of course they're raising horns to their friends, and they're telling stories, and they're laughing, and they're singing, and they're joking, and it's really cool because Christianity doesn't have that level of healing.
No. And
that's one of the things that I tell people is so valuable about a summel is that my dad died just about the time I met you, right? You'd think I'd be over that by now. It's been 20-something years, but once in a while, I might pick up a wrench that was out of his toolbox to work on something. I'll be like, man, I miss my dad, man. But we can summel, and then I can bring it up again, and I can get it out, and nobody's like, dude, can you get over your dad's death already? It's not like that.
No.
Just get over it.
When you're remembering someone at summel, the emotions hit you like a hammer, like it was just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my dad died 2 years ago. So yeah, and I talk to him every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I toasted him. Yeah, at your house was the first time I toasted him. Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah.
So,
and then we've even taken it. I've seen it at a whole nother level, and I've seen my own kinsmen who've never met Andy. Because we all know Herger was much beloved. They've never met Herger, but there's been so many horns raised to him by us and our kids that they're raising horns to him just because of the impact that he had on our lives, and they've never even met him. So that's going into the future. There'll be a time where people are raising horns to this fictitious Herger, and there won't be anybody in the room that's ever met him.
Yep.
But his memory lives in someone.
Yep, right out of the Hallmall.
Right.
Word fame. Yep.
So you can contest the value of sumbel to the Asatru people or the authenticity of it in history, but you can't contest like the real value that it has to people that are doing it.
One, it's Viking group therapy,
mm-hmm.
but also you can know someone for a couple gatherings without summel, and it takes you a while to get used to get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you sit with one summel with somebody, and you get to know them at an intimate level real
mm-hmm.
quick.
Yeah.
And so it's a meet and greet and almost an instant kinship for some people. And it's amazing when we watch our kids, watching our kids grow up and be able to speak at summel, and you just sit back and it's like, man, the words that come out of their mouths are just incredible.
Yeah.
And way above their age. And it's like, wow, I wish I was like that. Even when they were just little kids, they were still very articulate. Yeah. Little Leaf.
Leaf's always spoke well, yeah.
Leaf. He'd get up and just, him and Ian. So, but.
And Ian. And now here we are today, because Ian just had a baby, which is Gen 3 Asatru, as far as Gjallarhorn's concerned.
I'm a grandpa and sporting the grandpa beard.
Yeah. That's looking pretty good. You're looking very, very Hobbit-ish. very, very garden gnome.
I need the red hat, yes. So, next generation.
Yeah.
It's just amazing watching our kids grow up. And they grew up in heathenry. And all of my kids practice it their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Ian's very hammer out kind of guy, and Sam's like, he wears his hammer in his shirt, and he only shares it when he wants to share it.
Mm-hmm.
But they both love it, and it's like second nature to them.
Yeah. They don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Neither do my kids. Joe and David, I guess, knew a little bit of something before that. Which is nothing. Like we went to church. I was technically Catholic when I went to boot camp. And
I claim Catholic because I found out from Mark Carey, who went a year before me, and I was going to go as no prep because I wasn't Catholic. And he goes, no, you got to claim a religion because you want that once a week you go to church.
The break,
and that's 1 hour that you have that the drill sergeants aren't in your face. So I'm like, okay, I went to Harmony Church Chapel. And you walked in and you sat in the pew, and the drill sergeants were just like sharks, walking around and making sure you were behaving.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was funny. Yeah, well, my sons know Catholicism because my wife's Catholic, so they haven't received all of their sacraments. They were all baptized, and they've been to church with for their relatives' funerals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went to St. Augustine High School, and my childhood friend became a Catholic priest, and we graduated together. So, and we're still friends, and it's a hilarious situation.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being friends with Christians. That's the thing. People think we're still at war or something.
No.
But
I mean, the funniest thing was we lost touch because he went to Rome to study. He got ordained in the Vatican, which is a big honor. But we got reconnected after I got married and already had a child. And we went. I took him to go cut down a Christmas tree or a Yule tree, and took him to a farm. And I went up to the tree and I had my axe and I had some water, and I said a short prayer and offered water and sacrifice because you cut down the tree and then it regrows the next year at this tree farm. So, and Ed was with me, Father Ed. He's watching this whole thing. He's just watching, and then cut the tree down. I look up at him and he goes, it took me 5 years to be able to bless something with water. I'm like, well, it sucks for you, dude.
It is my birthright.
I don't need a certificate to use water. So, but no, I mean, he's helped Pat, my wife, and her whole family, who is primarily Catholic, and he's basically my wife's family priest.
Right.
So, and no, it's just humorous.
I think I've met him too. I think I probably have.
And him, and one glorious day, he was over for a gathering, and it was him and Þórr got into a debate over religion and things, and we were just sitting there and just, okay, 1 point for Þórr, 1 point for fun, because they were both excellent debaters. And we were just like flies on the wall. Oh, this is getting good.
Sometimes that's where the best conversations start.
That's when you experience something new. Someone tells you something you hadn't thought about or didn't know about.
Right.
If you don't agree with them, that doesn't count. No, it's how you learn things.
Or you, at least at the very minimum, they can give you a bunch of information you've already had, but you can see it from a different perspective.
Yep.
And sometimes perspective is everything, And
and quote from Brother Ragnar is his one thing is every book has value. Even a terrible, worthless book has value because it shows you what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you meet people and you exchange ideas. You don't have to attack them. You can exchange ideas, and if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, you can just discard it.
And they're not attacking you. You don't make you have to change because you don't agree with that. Well, theoretically, some people act like that, but
well, TikTok right now is what really drives Asatru. What I've seen, like, there's a lot of websites and a lot of things going on, but it seems like the hub is on TikTok.
Yeah,
and it's very. I don't want to use the word tribal wrong because I consider myself tribalist. Our tribe is our tribe, and that's the most important thing in the world. But it's very tribal in the sense where everybody's like ganging up and attacking other people. There's generally a short video, a slight misunderstanding, a complete dogpile attack, which I usually stand back and I'm like, these guys don't learn. They're doing the same thing again. And then a week later, everybody's apologizing because they jumped the gun and misunderstood the situation, and it was not what anybody thought. I'm like, we're sorry. Damage is done. But after time number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, there's a point where you just shut the hell up and just let the situation play out.
Yeah.
Which is why we wrote into our bylaws, it's written in there that I'm not allowed to correct people, tell them they're wrong, get in these little fights with people over that's a Nazi thing, or this is or you're doing it wrong. I'm not allowed to do any of that. My kindred will.
Yeah, the bottomless pit of energy.
It is.
You could be doing so much more productive things than arguing with people, and like you said, in the next week or week after that, it'll be the same argument.
So I got into it early on when I first started on TikTok. I won't rehash the whole shitty situation, but I got into it. It got a little heated, and then I took off and had to go do a trip. And this whole trip, I'm on a river, floating on the Smith River in Montana, which is a bucket list float trip for people 10 years before they could even get a float thing, right? And the whole time we're floating down this river, I'm concerned about this TikTok feud because I don't have access to it. Completely ruined everything. And I was like, never again, never again. And it was bullshit in the first place, and it was all misunderstanding. I lost friends, I lost followers, all because of a misunderstanding. It'll never be fixed, you know? And it didn't even have to happen, but it was because I basically made a jump to a conclusion that I shouldn't have jumped to. But at least I learned from it. You know, I did it once, maybe even twice, but I learned from my mistake and I quit doing it. Some of these people thrive on it. Like, that's their energy. Like, their energy is conflict. And if there's no conflict, they go create it.
Yeah, because they're not creating anything except conflict.
Except conflict, yeah. So we don't need that anymore, I don't think. But
I've done my time. That's your turn. I fought my fights. Your turn.
Yeah, I don't want to fight the fights.
Yeah, it's just amazing seeing what you've been building. It's awesome.
Yeah, we've been trying. But it's, you know, sometimes it's an uphill battle, and sometimes you just got the wind at your back and you're just cruising, you know. It all depends. It all depends on the flavor of the community, because it's going through its own, it's actually kind of going through, I think it's kind of a quickening, which is why I'm very hesitant to get into any of those battles, because at the end, all of this stuff is going to shake out all the chaff, and it's going to solidify, and then it's going to become something that we haven't seen yet. I can't even tell you what it's going to be because I don't know. But it'll be something that we haven't seen yet. It won't be like the old days of the Alliance, and it won't be this bicker battle that's going on online right now. This is just a transitional phase. This is the storm, you know. But soon the clouds are going to clear, the sun's going to come out, the plants are going to grow, and we're going to be in that whole different place that none of us would have ever seen before, especially not 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But you just got to let the process happen, and you can't destroy everybody that's going through this with us, you know?
And you can't destroy anyone that doesn't want to be part of a national organization.
I think a lot of people are just confused, and they're just regurgitating information that might be mixed up. And it was that way before. I don't know why the internet would have changed that. Just because there's more information available doesn't mean people are actually using the information that's there.
The internet and TikTok, I mean, it seems to be a competition of who's the most dramatic, grandiose, or a new and improved look at things, and a new cause or a new offense just to get the clicks.
Yeah, a big problem with TikTok is that if you have like a strong stance on anything, TikTok will force feed you confirmation bias. It will feed you stuff that makes you feel like you are absolutely right 100% of the time, no matter what. Which is why some people are like, you know, we got like 81,000 subscribers, and we subscribe to like 300 people. It's because I try not to subscribe. I subscribe to things I'm interested in, like sawmilling and like other things. I try to stay away from the only thing in the Asatru community. I subscribe to some of my friends, but I try to keep it vague enough that the algorithm isn't feeding me confirmation bias. I want it to feed me information. I'll decide what I want to. It's designed to give you exactly the type of thing that you want or that you consume. And I don't necessarily like that model, but it's what's making TikTok the big deal. But I think Congress is going to shut it off anyway. They're going to turn off TikTok because it's stealing money from American thieves instead of Chinese thieves.
Yeah.
So.
And it's more uncensored than YouTube or Facebook.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I think the real threat with TikTok right now is that people can communicate.
Yeah,
uncensored.
Yeah, I see news around the world on there that I can't see on the news.
Yeah, and sometimes it's already played out on TikTok. Like the news comes in, we've had discussions, we've had arguments, we've had fights. It's all played out, and then it hits the evening news a week later after we've already played out the scenario. Yeah. So it's a threat to, well, of course they're going to start saying it's a threat to democracy very soon. But what they really mean is it's a threat to them holding on to their supreme power, because they can't be letting the little folk communicate
so freely.
You can't be having all these peasants talking to each other. That stuff doesn't work for the king and the queen, so or the elite.
Yes.
So yeah. So I think that's the real problem with TikTok. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like the way it is right now, TikTok, there's just so much information. We don't know how to deal with it. It's just coming in, and it's coming in a way that makes us feel that we're right about the way we think and feel when we're not necessarily.
Yeah.
But it reinforces the fact that we're right by feeding us a bunch of people who think the same way we do. And then this is growing into something, like I said, it's growing into something we've never seen before. I can't wait to see where it ends up. But I think even now, we're starting to separate American Asatru, like real proud to be an American Asatru from Scandinavia, because there seems to be like this thing where folks are trying to adopt Scandinavian culture because they have something in their blood according to a test or whatever. I don't want to bag on all that stuff, but people are trying to correct the culture to fit whatever narrative they have in their head, when it's not necessarily what Scandinavia, all the Scandinavian countries have evolved into over the past 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You got this Viking motif in your head, and that's what you want your homeland to be, but your homeland hasn't been that for 1,000 years. Go meet those people. Go meet those people. You might find some really cool stuff. Like in Norway, right? Like I don't know if this is a common thing or not, but I ate 2 hamburgers at 2 different restaurants in and around between Elverum and Oslo, so somewhere around southern Norway area. 2 different hamburgers, 2 different restaurants. Both of them had corn on it. I did not order canned corn on my hamburger. It might be just a thing there, right? Like it's good. Maybe it's just a cultural thing. Maybe it's just they evolved that way. But literally canned corn, and then all the regular fixings like on a hamburger, and it's amazing. But those little things that happen in a culture.
Sweet corn or just normal corn?
Just like canned white or yellow kernel corn out of a can is what it was. But it just goes really good on a hamburger. Like I was really enjoying that. But it's not something I ever would have thought to do. But those are probably not the best example of a cultural norm. But I don't know if they do it in Sweden. I don't know if they do it in Iceland. I don't know if they do it in Denmark or anywhere else, but in Norway, at least 2 restaurants that I went to put corn on a hamburger, and that's weird, but it was good. So you can't think just because you're connected in history that you know all there is to know about a culture that you've never really even been a part of.
Well, and that culture evolved as it expanded.
As did ours, as did American culture.
Yeah. So Iceland was a little bit different than Norway and Sweden from the people that went there. Because,
even during the Viking Age.
Yeah. I mean, they evolved into a different society. So as our people move and migrate, we experience new things, new cultures, and we adapt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our ancestors were the most adaptable people. They met a new people and they changed their burial thing. Oh man, they do that?
I like that.
Cool.
Yeah,
I like that. I want to use that.
And we still do that today. But some people don't like that. Some people think that it's not historic. But I think having personal UPGs is the most historic way we can practice.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't dogmatic then. It shouldn't be dogmatic now. And just because it's wrote down because it's noteworthy, not because it's the norm.
Yeah.
If they wrote it down, it was noteworthy, which means it deviated from the norm.
Exception, not the rule.
Yeah. Because I mean, like I journal all the time, but I don't write down the mundane, the day-to-day, the routine. I write down the exceptional or the things that are the outliers or the, and I don't think people quite understand that because, I don't think a lot of people really keep a journal anyway for that kind of stuff. But so it's just my observation as somebody who, with some experience in journaling, if I was to write stuff down, if I was to write down the history of my people, you could certainly imagine that the exceptional would be noted, right? You would think.
Yeah.
That's all. And then on top of the noting only the noteworthy stuff, you also have patriotism and nationalist bias that you would put onto stuff too. Like if an Icelander wrote a book about the Viking Age, he would absolutely elevate the Icelanders.
Yep.
And a Norwegian would elevate a Norwegian, and Saxo Grammaticus did it for the Danes, and then you would have like Tacitus would downplay it because he wants to, his overlords to feel superior to these, Germanic hordes or whatever. So he's going to kind of downplay their capabilities a little bit because, and then recommend you don't fight them because you got to go across the bog and you can't really enter into their land,
Yeah.
make a few recommendations to keep the king safe, but then downplay. They're uncivilized heathens and
nothing to see there.
Yeah, so you got to take the source into account too, with what kind of value
and what was going on in the world when they were writing that source. What was their motivation?
Right. Yeah. Are they trying to elevate their own people? There's obviously a motivation behind it. People give Snorri a lot of flack because they say Snorri was a Christian. Well, so was everybody else.
Yeah, he was a poet, and that was his primary motivation, was to preserve the poetic meter and the poetic style. Right. And luckily he did, because he preserved so much.
Yeah, we're very lucky and grateful that he was there. And some people are like, well, Snorri's Edda is so different than the Poetic Edda, or from Saemundur's Edda. It's so different that Snorri must have changed this stuff to inject Christianity into it. And it's like, there's hundreds of years, as far as we can tell, between those. Yep. We're playing a telephone game for hundreds of years across continents. The story is going to change. Yep. And he's going to write down what it was at his time. If anything, he did us a service, because we can see from Saemundur's Edda to Snorri's Edda the things that are the same but different. We can see how much they've evolved over 100 years, so we can back think, okay, so how much did it evolve before Saemundur wrote it down? Where was it when it was all word of mouth? So we can actually see that there's an evolution of the timeline of the stories. We wouldn't have that context if Snorri hadn't wrote his stuff down either. So that stuff's important. So I know that video ended a little bit abruptly. What actually happened was our wives went out to get some groceries, and they were just coming back in the door right at that moment. So we stopped the conversation there, broke it off, and then we picked it back up the next day when we had a little bit more time and peace and quiet in the house. So that other half of that conversation I'll have up here for you next week. I hope that you enjoyed that. It was a great conversation, but we're going to keep traveling. We're going to get a little deeper in the weeds on the next one, and I hope that you're benefiting from that conversation. Don't forget to check out my link tree and go check out the websites and the other things we have going on that we have out there just for you. Most of it's free. Enjoy it, download it, make it your own, make whatever changes you need to make to those flyers and pamphlets and leaflets, and hopefully you subscribe to the YouTube and our other socials, and you engage with us on Discord and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and anywhere else that we happen to be. Engage with us wherever you find us. Ask us questions. We'll answer them whatever platform suits us the best. And then I hope that you're learning and growing with us as we travel down this path to who knows where, as Asatru is unfolding into what it's going to be as it blossoms from what it used to be. With that being said, I hope you come back next week and hear the rest of this conversation between myself and Gothi Haakon of the Gjallarhorn Kindred. Þórr, viki, my friends.